morning and welcome to your Daily Game Face. I'm Dr. Kim Lannon, coming from my Christmas home studio.
Nice. Merry Christmas.
Virtually from Lou, the Christmas magic maker.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we were going to have sound or video today, but we did.
I did a test, so we have sound and video. We had sound and video half an hour ago, so.
Oh, this is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So here I am. Merry Christmas for people who celebrate Christmas. Happy Hanukkah for people who celebrate Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa because it's coming, I think. I want to say Thursday. I'm so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I know it exists, but I don't know much about Kwanzaa.
Well, I know a little bit, but not enough to I'm currently trying to educate. And there's Rocky in the background barking.
All right. I was just checking to see if we had sound.
Are you even paying attention to me? God,
no, I'm doing my work.
It's like I'm in my own house.
I'm making sure we have sound.
Oh my God, we have sound. Isn't that lovely? So anyway, so here we are. I'm going to start the show off because one, we have to talk about the fact that it's almost the end of the holiday season, but people are super stressed today, including maybe a little bit of me too, because it's been a wild morning. That's why I'm not in the studio, hence the background of the Christmas in my house. But I wanted to make sure that this is the perfect time of year for giving. So I have to start off by saying two things. One, New England Patriots Foundation running the marathon this year. For people, please, I'm, $100 to buy a Super Bowl square. And also on February 2nd, I'm having a huge event. And anyone who would like to get a ticket, they're $60 a piece. But I have to do the Super Bowl squares first because they need to get sold. And then there's payouts of cash for that at the end of that. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that this is, one of those times where people are like, what do I do? Last minute gifts, whatever. So the one of my sponsors, the Inn on Golden Pond up in Ashland, New Hampshire.
Oh, they're back this year? Excellent.
They are back this year with the 2-day getaway giveaway for that. But also they have offered that anybody that books directly through them with a call to them through Erica, one of the owners, and says that they heard it on the show and they book a stay, they'll donate a small portion of the stay to my fundraiser. So if you call directly to the Inn on Golden Pond, it's a beautiful inn. It's a great place to stay in the winter because there's obviously skiing right around the corner, but there's snowshoeing and sleigh rides and, it's the winter wonderland up there. So, but if you call and book ahead, but you can also book any time of the year as long as you just mention that you heard it with Dr. Kim Lannon, and they will be happy to donate in some of the proceeds to my fundraiser for my charities. So I'm very excited. So please, if you guys want a romantic getaway or a fun girls getaway or a guys getaway, I don't know if that's a thing there, but maybe a little weird, but sitting by the fire together. I don't know, they go hunting together. I don't know. But certainly please do that. So there's lots of ways to help out my fundraiser this year for running. So anyway, in the gift giving season and so on and so forth. But what is today really all about? Today is Christmas Eve, and we are 1 week out from everyone making those New Year's resolutions and then 2 weeks later failing. So, I always like to, say, hey, we should be doing our starts of our new things right out of the gate. We shouldn't wait till the first. People have already said to me this week, like, oh, it's the holiday week. I'm just going to eat whatever I want. And then I'll start next week. Why do that to yourself? Oh my. Well, thanks, John. That was John coming into my screenshot.
We had an elf.
I know, right? That's my elf.
Yeah.
That was awesome, right?
Yep.
Oh, that's the first time I think you've ever seen him, right?
On the show?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so too.
I know. He has cognitive impairment apparently, that he just is walking around the house aimlessly. What?
That's not fair.
Well, I could tell that he was looking like as if he didn't know what he was doing and then all of a sudden he realized he was in my shot. And here he comes again. He's going to be in my shot again. We just might as well just have him on the show, right?
Why not?
Right? Hi, Rocky. Rocky's here. He had his little buff and fluff for Christmas last night. He was tub bound because he was a little not white.
Is Rocky the smallest animal in the house?
Poundage by half a pound.
Yeah.
by
Got
half
all
a
those
pound.
cats that are bigger than him, right?
He might, well, Echo is smaller stature wise, but half a pound heavier than him. He's just like a little person.
Yep.
Because he's so small. He's 6 pounds. She's 6.5. But anyway, so I'm back to talking about New Year's resolutions.
Yes.
So before I get into that, oh, did you see the little elf came behind me?
Oh,
What?
I didn't see it.
Would you like to see how cute he is, all buffed and puffed for today? Look at him.
Hi, Rocky.
He says, "Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays." Look how cute he is.
Yep.
Everybody needs one.
He looks thrilled.
I know.
Yeah.
So, okay. So when we're talking about this, before I even wanted to start that, it was interesting research that's been going on and, Jan Bohr, whatever. But here's the thing, because most people make their resolutions about being more fit, more healthy, working out, losing weight, all those things. Now, I wanted to talk about this because it's important to sort of maybe inspire it. But so overweight, and I'm going to be very blunt because this is the research, right? Overweight and obese people have been found in multiple research studies now to have different structures in their brain in terms of differences, right? Because of what they do. And so the experts in these research studies, and now anecdotally, obviously I can talk about it from my own experience with people in my practice for almost 30 years, but people have noted that there's a significant difference in the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is the brain region that regulates your temperature, your blood pressure, sleep, sex drive, appetite, and thirst, which I've talked about in other shows. So when we come into this time of year, right, our body temperatures up and down, our blood pressures up and down, our sleep schedules up and down, sex drive is probably up and down, no pun intended, and appetite and thirst are, probably off the charts for most people, right? Because of the time of year. So this is why I'm talking about it. So the hypothalamus is this little area in the emotional center of the brain, and it has two other things around it. It has the hippocampus and it has the amygdala, which one is for memory and the other one's for kind of agitation, aggression, anger, anxiety, right? The A for amygdala. But we're talking specifically about the third structure, which brings up why we have mood shifts or why we have feelings or why we have emotions. And that's why I brought it up today, is because according to the study, overweight and obese individuals have larger volumes of the hypothalamus, particularly in the areas that control appetite through like hormone release. And so it's kind of unclear whether these structural changes are cause or effect of weight changes, but they definitely are present because of weight or because of something that's going on with like obesity and being overweight. So they've done these animal studies that have shown that a high fat diet can lead to inflammation in the hypothalamus, causing insulin resistance and obesity. If I'm going too fast, stop me because I want to make sure I get it all in before we talk about it. So the high fat doesn't mean high fat, you shouldn't have fats, because people immediately will go right to, oh, don't eat fat. Nope. It's just that high fat. So you have to pick foods that are not high fat or the bad kind of fat, right? So avocados are good, eat things that are like naturally good for you that have natural fat. Don't sit down and eat like, a butter stick or lard or when you get a piece of prime rib, I know people love to eat like the entire backstrap of like the fat, probably not the best for you. And those would be the things where like the high fat diet, when someone's constantly doing that, would lead to the inflammation in that area of the brain. What were you going to say?
Nothing. I was just trying to figure out how you differentiate between the two. But I mean, as you just laid it out, it's basically common sense. Trust your instincts, right? Yeah.
Right. Exactly. People often will say, oh, peanut butter, for instance, people are like, that's high in fat. Well, if you eat the entire jar, which people can sit down and eat spoonfuls and spoonfuls, but it's high in protein. So it's also a good, okay, so here's, not to diss on it, but Jif is not a good peanut butter for people.
Yeah.
It's just not. Read the label.
Yep.
Like all natural peanut butters or all natural almond butters or something like that. Those are good fats and healthy protein and healthy fat. So, but we just still don't sit down and eat the jar, but you have to pick a brand that's not unhealthy, right? In terms of those things. So, but the inflammation that causes to the hypothalamus is fascinating, because if you actually look at the research studies, which I can't show you here, the differences in the brain for someone who is that overweight person or the obese person with that, and you can have their food log and you can see the differences between that and a person who's not overweight or not obese, is striking in terms of where their insulin or where their resistance and their obesity show up in the brain, right? And insulin resistance, what does it do? It makes you gain weight, which is why when people take things like Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, all those SLP1s and GLP1s, they help with insulin resistance because they allow the body to process better, because it takes a person out of eating those things. Because when you eat high fat and you eat fried foods and things with, the saturated, the unhealthy saturated fats, then the body goes into inflammation mode, which is why people don't feel good when they eat that stuff, or they get sick on the GLP-1s or the SLP-1s, because the body isn't supposed to have those. And so it's the way, because it's fighting the insulin resistance, so it throws it up or it makes you feel nauseous. So for people that are on that constantly are asking me, which they do still, like, I ate this or that, and or I didn't feel good, and I ask what they ate, it's usually because they've eaten. It's like a perfect study of like real time going, you ate this, therefore it feels this way, because your hypothalamus is going bleh,
Yep.
So the inflammation that is caused can also impact how satisfied you are, causing an animal, in this case for the research, but for people to require more food to feel full, which here we are in the holidays, right? You eat, I'm looking at Rocky, he's got something. You eat something that is either high carb, that's not it's a simple carb, or it's not a complex carb, or you eat something that has a lot of fat in it, or you eat something that's fried. It's not going to give you the satisfaction only for that instance versus something that would be more filling. So what's it going to do? Make you want more. It's like when you eat Chinese food. God love Chinese food, but you eat it and then you want more of it like a half an hour later, because you usually have what? The poo-poo platter, which is all fried and all that stuff, or you eat lo mein, or you eat all the stuff that's going to make you feel that way because it's inflaming your body. So the researchers have suggested that a similar process occurs when we do this, as opposed to the animals, where a high-fat diet triggers the inflammation in the appetite control center, which is your hypothalamus, and disrupts your ability to recognize your satisfied feeling, the blood sugar regulation, and ultimately what contributes to your weight gain. So when you have your control center, the hypothalamus switch, get disrupted, and you don't know when you're actually satisfied to know, like, oh, stop eating right now, or don't eat that, your blood sugar is going to go up and down or all over the place. And then ultimately you're going to gain weight because you're going to keep eating. This is why people get heavier, right? And so it's sort of in this whole thing, the researchers are proposing that the inflammation explains why we observe an increase in the hypothalamus size in overweight and obese individuals. So the actual size of the hypothalamus actually grows, suggesting that the body is responding to the inflammation by increasing the size of the immune cells. Imagine that, the immune cells in the brain. And those are the little things called the glia, for people that go back to their biology days, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, neuroplasticity, the ability to have like the neurons to have plasticity, to have like growth and movement and so on. Neuroplasticity in the brain allows for changes in the appetite control and eating behavior in response to the dietary habits and the environmental cues. So we have this sort of vicious cycle going on, because we're trying to have the brain constantly be regulated and stay balanced. And when you have this kind of, that's why I picked the holidays to talk about this, when we're all going to have inflamed hypothalamuses this week, because people are going to go right into that mode if you're not mindful. It doesn't mean you can't have certain things. It means be mindful that if you eat, 3 cinnamon buns in the morning, which people do, or you have that French toast casserole thing in the morning, within an hour you're going to want more food. So here you are, you're exponentially growing your hypothalamus to get bigger, because it's not satisfied, because it's feeling unfulfilled.
Yeah.
So if your body feels unfulfilled and you need to go back for something an hour or 20 minutes after you've eaten something, that should be a red flag to you, which people will say, well, how do I know? If you've just eaten and 20 or 30 minutes later, you're getting up to go back for something else, that means your hypothalamus is likely screaming inside your head going, I need more, which is likely that it's inflamed. Your body's inflamed and so on and so forth. Same with alcohol. So here's where we're talking about the holidays again, right? People who drink a lot more or just drink a lot in general, but then a lot more during the holidays, they're more likely to have, given this research, the hypothalamus get inflamed, which also makes sense because the body gets inflamed when you drink. And the older you get, the more the body has a hard time metabolizing it. And part of that is the emotional regulator in the brain that says, oh, I want more, doesn't shut off as easily because you've trained it to be like, well, I can have not just one drink, two drinks. It's just you bypass it because you're in the social situation, you're at the party, or you're trying to avoid like that relative that drives you crazy. But what you're doing is you're putting your body into that inflammation space, and your immunity drops because your immune cells in the brain, that glia, those little glia in that area, they're getting bigger to sustain your body's bad habit.
Yeah.
So I've said a lot now. So you're just saying, yep. So we're going to stop for a second and have you, digest that, no pun intended, to talk about that a little bit. What do you think, Lou?
Well, for me, this was the whole part of losing weight, which is why I had to manage my desire to eat again. In other words, first you do calorie deficit, you do your counting, and you do all your math. But basically, it was how can I get through the next 3 hours? What can I eat that's going to get me through the next 3 hours? So this is a skill you learn when you're trying to manage your intake and when you're doing the simple calorie deficit thing, because you can't be eating every 20 minutes.
Right.
So you have to figure out ways to do that. For me, it just came down to make sure you're getting enough protein. Protein is what stretches that out.
Right. And so it's such an important point. And protein actually is not inflammation based. So protein will help take the inflammation down. It converts sugars and it converts things into muscle. It converts things into, usable sugar sources that are healthy that, then pass out of your body. I'm using loose terms here so that people are just like, okay, I get it. But when I say to people, hey, instead of eating bread, I always say, take out pizza, pasta, bread, and white potatoes for like a month, right? And, people have a really hard time with that because there's such a satisfying thing there for them. And I say, add in more protein. And I find out from so many clients, and then, just people in general I talk to, the lack of amount of protein that people eat is pretty significant. People bypass that because what is it that you eat for breakfast in the morning? It's much easier to make a piece of toast or have a thing of oatmeal. By the way, oatmeal is great for you. However, oatmeal is also for people who are obese or heavy. Oatmeal is oats, right? Make you inflamed. They bloat you. So think of like when you have to soak overnight oats. Why? Because you have to rehydrate them. So when you eat them, they make you, bloat out, and people are like, but it's healthy for you. It is. Oatmeal is healthy, but reminding yourself that if you eat oatmeal and you don't have a protein source while you're eating it, like with a big thing of like almond butter with it or fruit and all those things, you're going to be starving in like an hour. Starving, I use that loosely, right? Because there's no protein there. So I always tell people that your size of your carb, if you're going to eat a carb in the morning, should be very minimal, like that much, if you can see it, like, maybe a double quarter size of something, like, and then everything else should be protein, a higher, nice, good fat, like avocado or like Greek yogurt or something that has fat and protein in it. And then people say, well, I like eggs, but I don't have time in the morning. And then I say, boil a dozen eggs at the beginning of the week and have them all week. So you have them there so you can grab them. It's better than grabbing a protein bar, which people will do. They'll put a protein bar or two in their bag. And you have to really smart shop around protein bars because protein bars they can have 42 grams of protein in them. That's great because a lot of times we're supposed to have, depending on a normal person's size, probably around 100 grams of protein a day. But when you get 42 grams of protein in a protein bar and 800 or more of the milligrams is in sodium, and then there's all this other, and then there's 12 grams of sugar in
Yeah.
it.
Sugar and fat.
Well,
Those are the
right,
things
they're
I have to watch
usually
for.
right, and they're not sugar, and there's nothing wrong with sugar, but be mindful when you eat sugars that are fake, like aspartame, saccharin, basically anything but the, like natural monk fruit and stevia, essentially from the raw, or regular sugar. Your body goes into this same thing about inflaming your hypothalamus, and it makes you not regulate and insulin produce correctly, which makes you more hungry. So it's this vicious cycle that people just aren't educated enough about. And how does that relate to mental health? When you have those food items in your body, what happens? Your anxiety goes up,
Yep.
your depression goes up, your mood dysregulates, you can become more agitated because, like I said, that amygdala and hippocampus, those two other areas that are connected in with the hypothalamus in that little limbic system, the emotional center, once one dysregulates, they all start dysregulating, which is why when people drink alcohol and they get a certain point, I always say this is why people end up at the end of the night either crying, saying I love you, or having their clothes off on the top of a table dancing, right? Because they're dysregulating because their brain gets inflamed, it dehydrates you, and so on and so forth. Now, if you have high fat, if you have a high carb, that's not a healthy carb that breaks down without the protein, so here's what happens and how to relate it to your New Year's resolutions that people are going to make. If you don't know this stuff, and you don't have to know it to this depth, but if you don't understand on some level that your behaviors are going to impact this, your 2 weeks is up before you start on the first, because this is the problem. This is, besides the fact that people, they'll go to the gym for 5 days and then that will be over or whatever. It's not just going to the gym. You can't run away a bad diet. You can't work out and outrun a bad diet. You have to have a diet that's not inflaming you. And people just think of it as food in, get fat, and then whatever. And not to be mean, it's about food in, and food is fuel. So if it's not fuel and converting to something beneficial, don't eat that.
You can't lose weight in the gym. You lose weight in the kitchen. That's where you.
Mm-hmm.
Gym is important to keep tone. It's important to keep tone and keep healthy and things like that. There's nothing wrong with going to the gym, but people too often think I can go to the gym and work weight off, and it's not the way it works.
Right. Especially people think if they can run the weight off or they can walk it off, because there's so many things like on social media, like TikTok and so on and so forth. I'm turning my TikTok, especially. I love TikTok, but it will promote, like, if you walk this much, you can lose this much weight. Yeah, you can lose weight, but it's not going to be the same as if you're
Not
doing
eating the same as you did before.
right. And people don't make the whole thing. So it has to be food. So first is sleep. Sleep is first. Good sleep, because good sleep helps you repair and allows your body to be in the right stasis, right? Homeostasis, balance. Then good nutrition is then the second number one, then movement. If you do not have those three things, you are going to be stuck. So when people come to me in 2 or 3 weeks and say it didn't work or it's not working, I always go, what's your sleep? What are you eating? And what are you doing for movement? Usually I get, this is usually the answer for most people. My sleep is only blah, blah, blah. So it's usually off.
Yeah.
I'm not moving, or I don't have time, or there's always some reason, excuse, justification. And then the food is, well, I'm just not eating this, or this, or they starve. There's people start starving themselves. And like, you can't.
No, that doesn't work, because that slows your metabolism down, and it's kind of
Right.
working against your efforts to lose weight.
Right. And so when you starve yourself and you cut yourself back, your calorie count, all your body does is go into safety mode to hold and preserve what you have. So it holds it there. And then you usually pop up, especially if you're going to the gym.
Yep.
And then if you are a person who's a binger on food, and then you purge it, which people do, that makes you gain weight too, because the body thinks it's not going to get fed and keep it. So what it does is it holds on to some of the food that you're not throwing up. I know this is gross, so at least it's the morning and no one's eating right now. But then what happens is it holds on to the weight. So people that have that disordered eating habit, that holds on to your weight, and people are insistent that no, I lose weight. No, you don't. You think you do, because you think that you're not keeping any of it down. But even if you eat something and 5 or 10 minutes later, quickly you throw it back up, your body has already started taking on and holding it. So you might throw up 90% of the food, but it's held into the calories that it already ingested, and it holds because it doesn't know when it's going to get a full thing. So those are, obviously extremes and bad habits to get into. And that's all inflaming the body. That's why people's teeth rot and they get gastrointestinal and esophageal issues and so on and so forth. And that's an emotional based kind of eating disordered behavior, right?
Yep.
Along with also, so is obesity and being overweight. It's an emotional disordered behavior.
I think this is so important as you go into the new year, because most people go towards weight, losing weight, getting fit,
Mhm,
things like that. And
mhm.
this is a crossroads, especially for mental health. I think it's so important because once you get that recipe down to lose weight and you start to stack wins and you get gains and you start to see differences in your body type, you start to see differences in your weight, hopefully you start to make gains. That just helps you just figure out that you have control over your outcomes, and that
Right,
goes everywhere in your life,
right,
right? But the
right.
problem is if people don't do it correctly at this time of year, especially when they go into the gym and it's packed and they don't want to deal with that kind of packed, if you don't do it correctly, it's stacking losses instead.
Right.
So this is such a crossroads. People set themselves up for failure or gain, and the gains can be great because once you lose some weight, once you realize you have
Yes.
control over your outcomes, you apply all those principles to everything else in your life.
Right. But see, you get that, right? And this is where it's so hard because that's work. So, and the fact, like when you say, and I'm on board with that completely, right? Because when you say, this is where you get it across the board in your whole life, that's one of the hardest things to get people to understand, is that, like, this is a broad sweeping impact across everything. If you can understand, if you're stacking wins like this, it's going to impact all kinds of areas, because you have the ability to do that. You're going to be able to do that in all areas of your life. But
Yeah.
again, comes back to those people who will do, their failure of their, and I hate to say it's fail, but it's a fail that's coming, because people won't stack the wins. They'll be discouraged that after a week, and I've talked about this in years gone by, in a week they haven't lost the 50 pounds.
Exactly right. Yeah.
50 pounds, and I'm not exaggerating. People will be like, I have to lose 50 pounds. I'm like, why don't we start with 2? Because on average,
Yeah.
when you do the right things, right, all the things I've talked about, you're going to maybe grab 2 pounds a week off.
Yep.
But people then add that up in their head and they think 52 weeks out of the year. And I'm like, well, that's 100 pounds if you have a year from now. But people go into, oh, that's so long, a year, which really it isn't a long time. And then it's like, oh, 2 pounds. And then they think that's not enough. You don't
So
lose
when you're
10 pounds
thinking,
in a week.
when you're sitting there looking at the big, you're overwhelmed by the big picture. What you don't realize is that you get in there in a week from now when you've dropped 2 pounds, you go, wow, okay,
Right.
I got to win. I
Right.
actually have some control, and you dig in a little more. This weight loss and financial hygiene is
Yes.
so important because all the principles that you need to be successful elsewhere in your life is getting your finances under control and getting your weight under control.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
you can take all those lessons forward in everything else you do. It's baby steps, it's small gains, it's stacking wins, it's figuring out ways to do everything you need to do better.
Well, and I think it's yes to all those points. And I think one of the biggest things that I'm going to use, I'm going to drop an F-bomb on my show here, is people get the fuck it's. And I can't sugarcoat what it is. It's literally I give up, but it's better to just like say, I get the fuck it's,
Yep.
because they get into that mode of, well, it didn't work and it's been 5 days and I tried it once, and
Yeah.
it's like the mindset goes into this. And so I'm asking my listeners, I'm asking people to hear that if you get the efforts, and you've only been in this for in a year, if you get the efforts and we look at everything and we decide, wow, you've been doing all the right things and you're having trouble, then we look at something else. We do it before that, right? But if you've worked on this for the first 2 weeks in January, because you waited, because you have to start on January 1st, and which I always tell people, as you know, that's never a good time to start. You should start today. Today is no different than January 1st. Start.
Especially when the gym's a component because you're a gym person. I'm
Right.
not as gym person as you are, but I go to the gym. January sucks. Right?
Mhm.
Nobody wants to be in the gym in January.
Only for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. It's the first 2 weeks, which is I typically try to avoid the gym for the first 2 weeks because I know, which occasionally I'll go in, but because I have all my stuff here too, but I'll go in and I'll be like, oh, this is aggravating. But I know that in 2 weeks, right around the 20th or 21st of January,
Yep.
it's over. It's over. And by February, it's a ghost town because people give up. And I tell people, if you don't want to go and get a gym membership and you don't want to waste that money, you can do body weight exercises. I mean, you can anything online now.
Yep.
10 minutes a day. There's body weight exercises, there're band exercises. There's a reason why stores sell everybody, from Dick's to Marshall's, whatever. You can get bands, balls, everything, little weights. You can go up and down your stairs 15 times a day. You can do jumping jacks. It doesn't take rocket science to put this together. But I
But
think
if you want to avoid the gym in the first 2 weeks, use those 2 weeks to do. I'm a big proponent of this because it's simple and people can follow it. 500 calorie deficit a day.
people, yes. And so, okay, so one, people don't understand what that means.
Yep.
So I'm going to explain it, even though I've explained it a whole bunch of times.
Yep.
That is an important point but people don't understand. So I always say calorie counting is rough for some people, especially eating disorder people.
Yeah.
But for people who are obese, because we're talking about obesity and stuff, obesity and overweight, as long as you have checked with your doctor, your primary care, make sure you don't have other things going on. Obviously, we always want to have that in mind. For men and women both, you want to stay around 12 to 1500 calories a day when you're fully in obese mode, right? Because you have to get it down, because the likelihood, statistically speaking, and depending on the research you read or articles you read, people who are obese or in the overweight category are usually eating 3 to 7,000 calories as a span a day.
Wow.
So that's triple, sometimes quadruple the amount of a person, both male or female, that they should be eating in a day for calorie count. And what you eat for calories matters. So I say all these things with the fact that also the calories, the type of calories, here's the downside of some of the GLP-1 doctors and the SLP-1 doctors that I get. I have 15 patients right now using one of these things. The doctors will often tell people, you can eat anything and everything you want on this. The medication will do the work. Big mistake.
Yeah.
Huge mistake. I immediately correct that when people are in my office and say, no, we can't do that, because when you lose all the weight and you want to come off of it and you have the habit of eating anything you want, because the medications don't really let you go past around 700 or 800 calories a day. And you're not supposed to go over 1200 on them, right? So if you're eating eggs and bacon, and then you're eating chicken or salmon and salad, and then you're having steak tips and a nice potato and some vegetables for dinner, and occasionally have like a little dessert, you're going to have a great outcome afterwards.
Yep.
If you're eating McDonald's, pizza, spaghetti, like throughout your weight loss, good luck.
Yep.
Good luck, because your body is going to come out and immediately go right back into brain chatter of food chatter and go, oh, I know how to do this. Because you're supposed to be, it's like any kind of medication, like in psych, right? When we take medication in psych, it helps a person be able to do the work, the therapeutic work. Here comes the cough. To be able to manifest behavioral strategies so that when the medication stops, they can maintain whatever benefits and wins, stacked wins that they've gotten over the time of using the medication. That's the benefit of using medication. Coughing. Sorry.
Get some cough medication.
Yeah. No, I just think it's dry in water. So I think that when we're talking about people who aren't using them, right? And I feel like I don't know a lot of people who now aren't using one of these weight loss things.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about people just doing it from the hip, and they're just going out and trying again this year, you've got to pay attention emotionally to, okay, these three things. I have to get good sleep, I have to move, and I have to be eating healthy portions that are to your person and really not going over, 1,000 to 1,200 calories for people who are obese, right? Making sure, again, because we want to make sure people medically clear for in case there's diabetes or cardiac issues or anything like that. We just don't run off and do that, because you may need to adjust that based on one of your conditions that you have. This is sort of talking in general. So please, everyone that's listening, don't run out and then just be like, I have to have 1,000 or calories or less, which brings back to the 500 calorie deficit. If you're normally eating 2,500 calories a day, every single day of the week, and you decide, okay, I want to lose weight, and you're not going to do anything but just take out calories, you have to be, and this is the confusing, you have to be 500 calories in deficit, not so you don't go from 2,500 to 2,000. Yes, you do that, but that's not how the formula works. It's actually, you have to be burning 500 calories more than you are taking in. That's your deficit. So it's those things, those two things really working together.
That's
And
the
people
gym
think,
roll. Yeah, I mean,
right,
obviously you want to be fit, and you want to
right,
do all the type of things that you want for your general health, but
right,
that's the gym roll in weight loss, is helping that calorie deficit to start. And then
right.
once you get there and you figure out how can I get from one meal to the other, then you start gaming, then you start figuring it out, then you start scheming, and you find out that proteins work better for you.
That's the thing. I've had people do the protein thing and really trust in the fact that I say, if you have protein in the morning, you will make it to lunch. And by the time you have your lunch, they're the people that usually have the 3 o'clock dip. I'm like, if you put protein in and you have protein at noon, you will not get a 3 o'clock dip. And I've had a couple clients in the past few months come in and be like, oh my God, I haven't had a 3 o'clock dip in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I'm like, right. Because
Right.
why? Because you're eating protein. Right. And they can make it all the way through to like a dinner time because the protein is sustaining them.
And can I make an important point here about this? Because I've gone through this process. Accountability is so important. Get
Yeah.
yourself an app, count your calories, right?
Yeah, there's some really good apps out there right now that give you the accountability buddy if you don't have a person in your life that do. Oh, there I just lost you, Lou. That have your that have not only calorie count on them, but they have food track, sleep track, movement track, and it gives you, you can get kind of like Orange Theory, you can get splat points, you can compete against other people, you can do all these things. I'm not sure if I lost Lou.
Yeah,
Lou.
we had a blip there. We're
Oh,
back.
did you lose what I was saying, or do I have to repeat
I
it?
lost what you were saying. I don't know if everyone out there lost what was.
Okay, so I'll summarize it.
Yeah,
That the calorie, now I got to remember what I said. The calorie deficit, you know, oh, for the trackers, there's trackers out there. There's app trackers that you can have that track sleep, hygiene, food, behaviors. Like they have full on tracking of every single thing so that you can really help monitor yourself. And you can also do competitions, enter them on, so you've got a community. Noom has that now. There's some new ones that came out recently that a couple of people told me about, which I can't remember what they are because I don't use them. But they showed them and I was like, oh, these are really cool because they do exactly what I'm talking about. They help you become accountable when you don't have some people don't like to tell other people what they're doing because it's
right.
embarrassing or they feel ashamed or all that stuff, which is fine. But these apps work really great. And they range from $4.99 a month to, I think, $100 a month, but hey, whatever works for you, if you can get that, I think an accountability buddy is super important for that.
There are
It's
several free ones too. There's several free ones that work really well. And you know what the flip side of accountability is?
failure.
Tangible results. In other words,
Oh, yeah,
yeah, I was 1,000 calories down today, or I've lost a couple pounds, or I
right.
needed to do 10,000 steps today. I got my 10,000 steps in. Yay, stacking a win, right? And
Right.
that's what encourages you, and that's what moves you
Well,
forward.
and it's great when you can see it. It's like people who do checklists that are not obsessive compulsive in their disorder, right?
Yeah,
When you can say check, 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 it's
yeah,
like, oh yeah, I got this, when it's, because it gets into that pattern of it's a behavioral strategy pattern of like, okay, I'm on a structure. This is good because you stack those wins. And for people that do not do their stacked wins over the first couple weeks, or let's just say the whole month of January, the reason why your resolutions, whether it's financial health, behavioral health, weight health, or whatever, they don't work because you have not accounted to yourself to actually do those stackable wins, and then you get down on yourself because you're too focused on outcome. I talk about this with all of my athletes. Outcome goals are not your goal. Outcome goals happen as a result of you doing the work in the journey. If you're focused on the win, you will not win. You will be focused on it. It will sabotage itself. It will do all the things because your brain, human beings will go into that mode of today wasn't a good day because I didn't lose 5 pounds. Today wasn't a good day because I ate a sticky bun. Today, instead it's like, no, what were your wins today? You want to be able to look at your app or your notebook or whatever and say, I had 2 wins today, not I had 3 losses. It's I had 2 wins, and so that you don't get the F-its. And that makes you psychologically more healthy, which of course goes to the whole thing of reduces inflammation because now you're not dumping cortisol as much, the hormone out of your pancreas. That's a stress hormone, and stress hormones make you eat more. Stress hormones make you retain water and sugar and higher carb foods more. They make you crave more. So,
Yep.
And they all cause that inflammation in the body. So stop looking for, the 15 different pills that, reduce your inflammation and take down this and do that. Like, yeah, turmeric and pepper is great. That's awesome. And I love that for people, but it's not going to make an obese or overweight person drop weight. Now, here's the other thing that I was going to talk about really quickly about this is when people are, because I've got so many people successfully losing weight in the past 2 years, some doing it without the medication, some doing it with. When people are heavy and, overweight and obese and they lose weight, if you are not working out, I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. If you are not working out, now working out doesn't have to be like I do it. By just doing 5 or 10 minutes a day as you're losing the weight and you take off 100 pounds, you are going to have really saggy, stretched out skin. And you can drink as much collagen, you can have caffeine, if you are not consistently doing strength training to convert the fat that is holding that skin in place when you stretched it out into some kind of muscle, you are going to sag like a elephant butt. That's the way it is. Right?
I was wondering where you were going. I was waiting for the end of that sentence.
So you're going to sag like an elephant butt, it's going to have that wrinkly elephant butt look. And so again, that comes back to people saying, and a couple of friends of mine are like, oh my God, it's so much work, or I don't have time. Well, if you don't like the saggy look and you don't like that skin wrinkly look that's like now flapping in the wind, it's not, I say you're never going to get rid of it fully unless you have surgery, especially when you're losing 100+ pounds. But if you do strength train and tighten it up and you build muscle, it holds that because it takes the place of where the fat was. And it also helps you burn more fat and you lose more weight. I mean, it's this beautiful, like wonderful cycle that's not vicious. It's a wonderful thing. But if you are complaining because you lost weight and now you have all this saggy skin, but you're not willing to lift a 5-pound weight to do that 3 or 4 times a day for 15 reps, you're going to have saggy elephant butt skin.
Yep.
And then you're not going to feel good about yourself. I had someone tell me the other day, I felt better at X amount of weight in terms of confidence than I do now. And I was like, you've lost 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but I didn't have the saggy skin. I'm like, so you'd rather have 100 pounds more and be at death's door, which is what they were, right? Yep. Walking heart attack versus doing 5 or 10 minutes of some strength training to tighten up some of that skin so you don't feel as bad. I'm like, there's something wrong with this picture. But that's the thing is that's what people do. They're like, oh, I had more confidence when I was heavy because I didn't have the saggy skin. I'm like, but you were going to die. So it doesn't really matter. So saggy skin is the least, first world problem. But
I feel people underestimate the benefits of the gym from all the things that we talk about, whether it be weight loss or just toning and general health in general, but the mental aspects of it are exceptional too. Moods change, gyms change moods. Just getting out and getting some activity going just changes your whole outlook.
Right. Exactly. But so you always say those good things, right? And I always come in with like okay, here's what my clients say. I get this a lot, and especially this time of year. I don't want to go to the gym because I'm going to embarrass myself.
Yeah.
Girl, you are not embarrassing yourself. There's 100 other people standing around you in that gym doing exactly what you're doing, feeling exactly the same way. They're just not saying it out loud and they're showing up and they probably feel embarrassed or they probably feel whatever. But I also tell people, no one's looking at you. You know why? Because nobody cares.
Right. Yep.
No, nobody cares as much as you think they care. And if they do, I mean, I certainly have to admit that when I'm at the gym, especially when I'm on the treadmill and I'm watching people, because now they put all the weight racks in front of me for some reason in the gym I go to, which drives me crazy. But at the same time, I get entertainment because being the athlete and growing up in physical training and being, into the personal training stuff and nutrition, I watch people. Oh boy, it's a lot. But you
Yeah.
know what? In my head, I giggle and I say, at least they're in the gym.
Right.
But sometimes I'm like, oh, and again, at least they're in the gym. So that's where I go because it's just, it's a hazard of the job when I'm like, you're doing it wrong. You're
I don't
doing
know
it.
if this is technically spotlight effect, but that's such a big element for people too to get over. It's like no one's paying attention to you.
Mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm.
you think there's so much more attention on you than there actually is. Go out and live your life because no one's
Exactly.
really paying attention.
Right. Well, and that is the spotlight effect, is that everybody thinks that everybody's always looking at them, and
Yeah.
therefore, no, they're not. I mean, I might be looking at you just because I'm me and I have to manifest it in my head that you're doing it wrong, but I'm
Yeah.
never going to say anything to you. And I really don't care at the end of the day. It's just, one of those things I do because
Yeah.
it's a hazard of my job. But most of the time I look around and no one's looking at each other. People they come in with their friends, they do their thing and they leave, or they come in with their partner and they leave, or and I've seen some people and I'm like, God, that person is in here doing it. And I'm so proud of them. And if I see them, like, especially women, and I see them in the locker room or whatever, I'm like, you're doing great. If I see them consistently come in, because I see them working, they're not coming in and riding the bike, reading a book for half an hour or an hour, and they haven't broken a sweat. And they're very easy to just kind of pedal along. I'm like, oh. I giggle because I'm like, yeah, that weight's not coming off that way. So, but they're there. That's what I go. They're there. They're at the gym. So, and 90% of the battle is just walking through the door, as you know, walking up to the door, turning around, and leaving. I've been known to do that on occasion. Like, I'm not going.
Have you done it?
Oh, I have. Oh God.
Oh, no.
I mean, it's really rare, but I've walked. Well, during the
I don't get to the door and do it. I'll on the way driving there, I might do it, but if I get to the door,
no.
yeah.
So it was only during the pandemic time when I could see in the windows, and I was like, look, and it was like 7:30 at night, and I could see through the windows like all the treadmills being used. I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I'm going to go home instead. That's what I did. So, but in a general working, healthy state of affairs, no. But I did that a couple of times. I looked at the gym, I'm like, oh, I'm not going in there.
Get yourself a couple 15-pound barbells, and you can do so much at home. I mean, the gym is great because, again, if you can just motivate yourself to get there and go, I'm going to do 5 minutes, whatever it is. And you get there and you generally do more than 5 minutes. It's just getting.
Well, that's what happens is once you get in there, that's what happens.
Yeah.
But the thing about the home thing is, or I say people pack a bag, to your point, pack a bag, put it in your car so you don't go home first from work or something.
Yep.
But when you are home, there's always a reason why you can't do. But you can do the amount of time you sit and watch TV, the weights should be right next to you, or a band, or like your living room is a perfect place for planking. It's just 2 seconds out of your 20-minute TV show 14 times a day.
You can do it during a commercial break.
Oh, yeah, you can do it during the show. Planking is very easy to just do during the show, or doing some, leg lifts, or because you can actually, both of them can exist at the same time. You don't even have to wait for a commercial break.
What do you think? I've been fascinated. I haven't dug into them, but what do you think if there's a trend, or maybe I'm late to the trend? Maybe it's a long time trend, chair workouts and things like that.
Chair workouts are really good for people. I think for people that are really, really heavy and that need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Or that have arthritis, or they have some kind of physical condition where at least they're doing something to get them started, especially if you have bands or light weights, they're excellent. And any kind of movement like that will boost your regulatory system in that limbic system to make you feel better, because it's a win. So it's a stackable win, like emotionally, because you know that you've done something. So chair workouts are really good as long as you know what you're doing. You have and you're doing enough in the chair to make the body have a response. I will say I'm not a big fan of the multi-million-dollar business for the under the desk pedals.
Oh yeah, no.
I would love to just go, that's just not a thing.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. But people like they buy into it, and I'm like, and I've tried to see. I always like go, okay, let's look up the clinical research on this and see what this. No. So if you're out there and you got everybody today, you're out there and you got them the Christmas present for $19.99 as seen on TV, and you got them a pedal for underneath the no.
Yeah.
Because you know what's going to happen? That's going to sit under that desk or never come out of the box forever. And it
Yeah.
will end up in the junk pile.
And it won't be a loss either.
Yeah, because it's a waste of money and a waste of time because it doesn't do anything. But
Yep.
hey, and people say, yeah, but people are doing something. I'm like, well, it's kind of like you might as well just sit and do nothing because you're doing nothing.
All right. I struggle with this from time to time. Define cardio for me. Define at what point you're in a cardio workout.
Well, that's going to be a little bit different for each person.
Right.
I mean, you get the range. I mean, there's ranges, right? So you want to have, 120 beats per minute to 150 beats per minute, depending on your
based on heartbeat, basically.
Based on your heartbeat, right? And it depends on your fitness level. So it's kind of hard to answer for everyone as a blanket. So it's different for each person, but there's a general kind of range for the heartbeat to be in a certain zone. So like if you go to Orange Theory, they have you keep your heart rate up for an X amount of time based on your fitness level so that you have enough burn time. It's also based on what your fitness goal is, So if you're never a gym goer, and I'm giving this as an example because this is what happened in the next 2 weeks, and I'll definitely hear about it from clients. They haven't been in the gym, they go, and then all of a sudden they're 2 minutes into their workout or whatever, and they're going like gangbusters, and then their heart rate's at 190 or 187. No, I'm like, we need to bring that down because that means your cardio, you're not doing anything good for yourself at that juncture because you're just overworking something that's not ready to be worked that hard. And that's, your VO2, your volume of oxygen, right, is not going to max. VO2 max is not going to be at max. It's just going to be, you're going to be at a deficit because your body's not ready for that fitness level. So that's a long version of the answer that you're really looking for. But cardiac fitness or cardio fitness is going to be progressively based on how you are progressively getting more fit. And you want to, but at the base level, you also want to be able to get up and to say, like, say we have an average person with average health, or good enough health, and they go in, you want to be at 125 to 135 maybe the first week or two, just getting it up there for maybe 5-10 minutes, keeping it at that level until you can get even further. So I'm very loosely talking, so for all my listeners that are going to
find out what your range is, right?
Is what?
Find out where your range is.
Right. You have, there's ways to find out. I mean, if you're in a really high end gym, I wouldn't say no knock on Planet Fitness because I use Planet Fitness, but Planet Fitness isn't going to have anyone that's going to be able to tell you this. But if you know someone like me, or someone that's in personal trainer, or you go online, Dr. Google, like it will give you, if like you say I'm 225 pounds, I'm 5'4" as a female, and I don't work out, what should be my cardiac whatever. There are things online that you can look at, and it will tell you that general rule of thumb of like sort of how to range yourself to get into that.
And at Planet Fitness, a lot of the cardio machines have a heart rate monitor.
Yes.
So you can keep track of that, so you can make sure you get yourself in that range for the amount of your target time, how much time you're going to be in that range.
Right. And why is that important? Because if you can get into your heart rate, your VO2 max, right, your oxygen level to be at a certain level, and to be able to sustain it for X amount of time based on your height, your weight, and all that stuff, the more you'll burn, and you'll have the calorie deficit, and the healthier your heart and lungs will be because of it. So it's also wonderful for people with asthma. When people tell me, oh, I can't work out because I have asthma. I've had asthma since I was before birth, probably, right? And one of the best things for asthma, 99% of the time, unless there's these really extreme cases, which mine's one of the extreme, it helps your asthma, going and working out. So when people say, oh, I don't work out because I have asthma, it actually will help you. So that doesn't mean
if you start out like the next couple of weeks, instead of going into the gym, start out with the calorie deficit, just a simple calorie deficit, and just get your mind wrapped around it.
Right.
these are the things you start gaming. You start figuring out I need more protein. You start figuring out I need to do strength training because that keeps the metabolism up for a longer period of time than the cardio. The cardio will get your metabolism up, but it doesn't sustain. You
Right.
you tax your muscles a little bit, that'll sustain for 24 hours and it gets your metabolism up and helps. So you start finding out all these ways to make that simple little calorie deficit goal
Right.
easier for you, and you
Right.
just get better at it as you go.
Right. Well, and I think not only that, but I think if people realize too that cardio isn't going to be your weight loss, it's going to be strength training.
Yeah.
So if the cardiovascular is helpful for your lung and cardio fitness, which is super important, and also for some burning. But if you're not really combining it with 5 or 10 minutes of strength training, and I start off with 5 or 10 minutes just to not overwhelm people, or just doing some body weight exercises like some push-ups or some knee push-ups or some planks or some just not sit-ups, because that doesn't do anything for your core. But if you're not doing that, you're not going to also have the burn. So people go in and become, warriors on the treadmill or the elliptical for hours. I see people sometimes for 2 and 3 hours, but you know what? They're not burning the same as they would if they did a half an hour on the treadmill and a half an hour of strength training, because the strength training boosts that. It will give you better cardiac results, which will reduce your inflammation more because the muscle is being toned and help you. It's a balancer.
But if you're finding, like for me, it was like 1500. It's a little shy for me. I need a little bit more than that, generally speaking. But if I can go do
Yeah.
500-700 on the treadmill, again, not ideal, not the best use of it, but that's just helps me with my calorie deficit. It's just, this is
Right.
how you find ways to game.
Right.
Plus, again, the benefits of just getting in the gym and doing something, being active.
Right. Exactly. Well, and also, so when like you just said, 500, 1500 isn't enough for you. If you're working out, 1500 calories isn't going to be working out. I use the 1500 as the level of most sedentary kind of people who are eating 3,000 to 7,000 calories a day. Remembering that, when people, let's just take a dinner. You go out tonight, I'll say, you're going to Applebee's tonight. I love saying that.
Oh boy.
You go to Applebee's tonight. Your dinner alone on average at Applebee's is about 1,300 or more calories just in the dinner that they give you alone. That's not the app, the drink, the dessert, and whatever else. And then that's not including the lunch you ate or the breakfast or the snacks in between. So when I say the 1,500 calorie person right?
Yeah.
You aren't that person because you work out, because you mindfully eat, right? So when you're at a level that you're not working out, you're sedentary and you're not mindfully eating, 1,500 calories, as long as it checks out with your primary care, is going to benefit you because you're not in a fit level.
When I was when I was going through this and working it, my daughter was young and working at the 99s. And at one point they started putting calories on the menu.
Yeah, you died, right?
I sat down one day and I said, there's nothing in this place I can eat.
Right.
There's absolutely nothing I can eat, not even the salads.
Right. Well, I use Applebee's as the example because I know the menu very, very well because I have clients that go there, and obviously I have gone there. But I can tell you there's like 4 items on the whole menu that are conducive to a person who's in healthy mode.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean that there's not good foods there, but if you eat the entire thing,
yep,
no bueno.
Yeah,
no bueno. Right. And it's kind of like if you go to Cheesecake Factory, the 25-page menu that they have, there's one page that's called the healthy fare. Go to that page because it's the only page that's going to keep you out of a 2,000 calorie dinner just for the dinner. And mind you, God love them, because Cheesecake Factory cheesecakes are spectacular. But every piece of cheesecake roughly is anywhere from 600 to, I think, 1,100 calories for each of their pieces. Wow. Each piece.
Yeah.
There's no diet cheesecake. And I love their cheesecake. So when it gets ordered to the table, I have a bite and then I'm done.
And I kid around about this because it doesn't tell the whole story, but people ask me about losing weight. And I said, I just didn't eat stupid 100% of the time.
Right.
And it's like, it's not like you don't have to go into prison camp. You don't have to, you don't have to pass up cheesecake 100 times, 300 times a year, but you can't do it every week,
Right. Exactly. So, and I think that, the whole thing about don't eat stupid 100% of the time. Also, because I know what you mean by that. And I also know you're very dedicated when you do that. But also it goes to people in my life, I can say, not even, I don't have clients to do this, but I have people personally in my life that will be like, it's Christmas, or it's the day that ends in Y. You know, I've always said that
Yeah.
I'll do it tomorrow. You know, it's okay. If you do that, every single day is just going to stack up, and it's not going to be a stack up a win.
Yep.
Right. I only had one piece of pizza. I only had, if you're saying, but I only,
Yeah.
that's probably a sign that you're in behavioral dysregulation if you have to
It,
make the excuse.
it
So,
can be tough. I grew up Italian. Pasta's tough.
yep.
Bread's tough,
I,
but most of these things, once you give them sugar, once you cut down on sugar, once you give up bread, you don't want it anymore. You just get
right.
to the point where you
Well,
get past that craving.
that's the best thing about when I tell people for their New Year's goals. I say, let's just do like a small goal. Like, let's not eat bread for the month of January.
Yep.
Like, that's it. And when you take out, but when you have, because people are big bread eaters, and you know, I don't
Oh, I
eat
know.
bread. And
Yeah.
when I do, I suffer. So that makes it even worse. Right. But when people take out bread, it's a huge drop in sugar because people eat a lot of, you know, the general person that I know will eat 2 or 3 pieces of bread in the morning or a bagel, and then they'll have a sandwich for lunch. There's more bread or something, and then they'll have bread with dinner. And when you go out to a restaurant and they bring you a whole bowl of rolls and
Yep.
and then, you know, and it's a waste food, unfortunately. I mean, yay, great for bread, for things, but it's a wasted food and a wasted calorie filler because it's, you know, you go to a restaurant and people say, would you like garlic bread? I'm like, no. And everyone else at the table goes, yes. Because I always go, it's because you're bored. You're going to
Yep.
eat just because you're bored. It's filler while you're waiting for the dinner. And that goes right back to the beginning of my show today to say that that's an inflamer of the hypothalamus because garlic bread, it's great. Don't kid yourselves. I love it.
Has
But
anyone ever had bread at the table, garlic bread, a dip bread, or stuff like that, and said, "No, I can't eat my meal"? It's never happened.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, because
I don't eat
it
bread
works
anymore.
on
But
you different.
if I did, I mean, I can't say I shouldn't fib. I occasionally eat a little bread and then I
Sure.
suffer. But you know, I had a bagel when I was in Florida last week. Was that? Yeah, I was in Florida last week, and I'm like, I had it because my bestie had some bagels, and I was like, oh, I suffered.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, but then after I ate it, I'm like, I don't want to eat this. Why? Well, because it has gluten. But Killer Dave's doesn't have gluten in it. But I just don't want to do it because it's bread.
Yeah.
It has
But
all the other stuff in
it
it.
doesn't fill you up. It does nothing. And once you get to that point where you're trying to get from one meal to the other,
Right.
and I get laughed at a couple times because I'd take like a sub and or a sandwich and I'd eat out of it, right?
Right.
Just get a fork and eat out of it. Hey,
Right.
why don't you eat the bread? I guess because I don't want to spend the calories on that. If I'm going to spend calories, I want it on something that I like. You
Well,
know?
right. Exactly. Don't do it. Bread's filler. I
Yeah.
always tell people that bread is just filler. Just take it off the bread. People say, I have no time. I have to go to McDonald's. I'm like, take it off the bread. Eat your burger off the bread. And McDonald's actually and Wendy's will give you the items without bread.
Will they?
They will. All you have to do is say, could you do that? And they'll put it in like the little box and they'll give it to you like the chicken with the lettuce and the tomato, the grilled chicken, or they'll give you the hamburgers with the whatever you want. They will. You just have to ask.
Wow.
Yep.
Who knew?
I know. Me. This is random
How
crap. You
bad?
know, I know.
And how bad does that McDonald's bread have to be?
Oh, well, you
It's gotta
know,
be brutal.
and as you know that the studies, but also the TV shows, the documentaries that have come out. I don't want to knock McDonald's, but it's McDonald's. Putting the Big Mac in the back of a trunk for a month and
Oh,
2 months and 3 months and coming back and it's still like not
yeah.
changed.
All right, so you work a lot with teenagers and things like that too, because
Yes.
teenagers will eat this stuff to no end because the
Yes.
metabolism's still working, they get away with it, and it's not really affecting them to a large degree, except mentally and your mental health. It does have a big effect on you, doesn't
Well,
it?
that's the thing is that, yeah, it's not necessarily, I mean, for 90%, I wouldn't say all teenagers, because certainly we have a massive obesity issue in kids and teenagers in this country, but um, the emotional toll that fast foods and the bad habits, the unhealthy habits of childhood and teenagerdom, uh, I tell certain clients sometimes, I'm like, it's 17, you're doing that right now. And at 25, you're going to have ass spread, the sit down and this, you're going to get so fat. I don't say that, but that's essentially, you're going to get so fat down below because it just sits on you and you get that flat butt. It's the elephant butt without the wrinkly skin, because you get so much, because your metabolism will change. Just wait. And it's really significant.
But before that, it's triggering anxiety. It's triggering a lot of the problems that kids are facing, isn't it? It's certainly contributing to it.
Right. And because it's that whole thing from the beginning of the show, is that when you eat that stuff, it doesn't really satisfy. So then you have the French fries on top of it, and then blah, blah, and then by the time you get home, then you have a bowl of ice cream, or it's endless.
Yeah,
it's endless. But the metabolism is usually better. But by the time you do your 25 or 22, that changes, and then people are, there's a reason why they call it the freshman 15 when people go off to college. Yeah, it's booze, but it's also kids eating, and their metabolism has changed. So, anyway, okay. So the time on the clock is ready for us to have a good afternoon and Christmas Eve. And I don't know how many people who know that our show was on today, or I should say my show was on today, but if you are missing it, that's because it was early. So hopefully when you put it up today, you can let people know that
it's going up now, so people will find it.
Okay, so make sure you tag it all up, and everybody, please make $100 donation today to me. It's tax deductible. Get it in before the new year. Put it up on your daily game face has my give and gain page, and I will link it today to that. And I'm going to put out stuff. And also, if anyone wants tickets and is interested in coming to my really cool comedy show with Dave Russo and musical bingo night on Sunday, February 2nd at Jack's in Burlington, Massachusetts, or making a donation towards that, and cool stuff going on, that would be great.
Which elf is that, by the way, playing with the paper?
That would be John. John the elf is playing with paper. Sorry, everybody, that you can hear that.
It's fine. It's fine. I was just wondering if it was Rocky or John.
Nope, Rocky's sound asleep in my lap.
Oh, nice.
Yes. All right, you guys. So I don't know if I'll be back next week, because you and I haven't talked about it and what we're doing for plans, but we'll see, and we'll post that I'm going to be here. But in the meantime, happy everything for the next week, and I will hopefully be talking to you all next week.